The Albanese government says the No campaign on the Voice to Parliament is engaged in Trump-style tactics whose aim is to sow division across Australia.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch and to another heated week of debate about The Voice playing out in the media, featuring more bad polling for the Yes campaign, an attempted reset by the Minister for Indigenous Australians, and this full-page ad from No campaigners.
Don't worry, sweetheart, it's just shareholders' money.
That sledge from the Conservative lobby group Advance Australia ran in the AFR last Thursday and depicted Yes campaigner Thomas Mayo putting his hand out for a wad of cash from Wesfarmers chairman Michael Chaney, whose company is donating $2 million to the Yes campaign. And who is that sitting on his knee in a teal dress and crown? His daughter and federal MP Kate Chaney. As soon as the print edition hit the streets, the bucketing began, with the ad slammed as racist, sexist and offensive. And journalist David Marr told ABC Radio,
"It is horrible, and I would have thought anybody vetting advertising in the AFR would have seen it as horrible in a flash."
While federal MP and Yes supporter Sally Stegel asked on Twitter,
"Does this racist trope reflect your values, Financial Review? With media freedom comes responsibility, and this is unacceptable."
And Kate Chaney, who was depicted in the ad, also reacted,
saying it's disappointing to see the No campaign stooping to personal attacks when Australians are more interested in learning the facts about The Voice and how it can contribute to closing the gap.
Meanwhile, on the ABC's 7:30, former PM Tony Abbott, who will be voting no in the referendum, was being pressed on his thoughts on the ad.
I'm saying that the SEN Review printed it.
But you, Tony Abbott, are capable of having a view as to whether or not that's an acceptable image in contemporary Australian campaigning.
If it were me, I wouldn't have done it. But, as I said, the SEN Review accepted the advertisement.
It certainly did. But within hours, the Fin was in damage control and voting no to what it had done.
The political advertisement about the Voice referendum placed in today's Financial Review should not have run, and we apologise for that. We want to encourage a mature debate from both sides and avoid personal and/or inappropriate attacks.
Which makes you wonder why Nine said yes in the first place. There is an easy answer to that: money. A full-page ad in the Fin sells for around $18,000, we're told, and Advance Australia is a return customer, running this full-page attack ad in June, which asked the Wesfarmers boss,
"Why are you willing to lend your stellar personal reputation, legacy and leadership to Mr Mayo's radical political cause?"
The ad also told Chaney,
"Millions of Australians who spend their hard-earned cash at Bunnings and Kmart every week would like an answer."
And if you think you've heard that line of attack before, you'd be right, because it's been parroted by the opposition leader, who has condemned corporate Australia, and Wesfarmers in particular, for donating to the Yes campaign.
Every time I hand over my credit card or cash at Bunnings or at Coles, I don't want part of that money going to an activist CEO.
That's how politically toxic and far-reaching the debate has become. So, can we expect more full-page ads like last week's in the AFR? Nine told us.
The Financial Review would consider any further submitted advertising from Advance Australia based on the nature of the content. As we have said, we would not publish content like the advertisement we regrettably ran last week.
Meanwhile, with no voices getting loud headlines in the media, the polls are spelling bad news for Yes campaigners. On Tuesday, the front page of the Canberra Times reported,
"Historic vote at risk in regional Australia."
That conclusion came from an online reader survey of 10,000 voters, which found 38% saying they would vote yes, 55% saying no, and 7% undecided, with the paper adding,
"A majority of respondents, 72%, feel the federal government has not done enough to explain the Voice to the community."
That reader survey, conducted across the country for ACM papers, including 14 regional dailies, was even worse for Voice backers than the latest news poll published in The Australian, which found the yes vote dipping to 43% and 4 out of 6 states showing a no majority. And there's no doubt the Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney was well aware of those numbers when she fronted the National Press Club on Wednesday.
Her plea to voters:
history is calling us.
Nominating the priorities she wants the Voice to concentrate on: health, education, jobs and housing.
But she was soon facing uncomfortable questions like this from the media pack.
In your view, what are the real implications of a no vote?
We are in the campaign for a yes vote, and that is where the focus is, that is where my belief is, and I believe that's where the Australian people are at.
Maybe so, but it's not what most of the polls are telling us. With Linda Burney attacking the No campaigners and their tactics, and that did not go down well with the reporters present.
This press club address was designed to reset the faltering Yes campaign.
We need a voice because we need to do better.
But the minister went off script to denounce the tactics of the No campaign.
It is importing Trump-style politics to Australia. It is post-truth.
And newspaper headlines took a similarly dim view of her set-piece address, focusing on the debate getting nasty with insults and claims of bullying. And on Sky News, its primetime hosts, who are almost all anti-voice, were even less impressed and set about knocking Burney for 6.
And a massive swing and miss today from Linda Burney.
Linda Burney, please stop embarrassing yourself. Stop hoodwinking voters too about your racist voice.
The voice to Parliament is in the toilet, and we'll talk a bit more about Linda Burney's continued unhinging later.
And even Chris Kenny, who's a passionate supporter of The Voice, gave the minister the thumbs down for her comparison to Donald Trump, saying it was
dumb politics by Burney and Labor. They need to deal with the concerns, expose the scare campaigns, attack the arguments, not the opponents.
And on that point, at least one voting analyst agrees, saying The Voice is now being seen by voters as a party political issue.
And that's really dangerous. You know, for as long as it's seen as Anthony Albanese's voice or the Labor government's voice initiative, which is sort of the bag that it's drifting into, as opposed to an issue of human rights, social justice, those sorts of things, it falls foul of this kind of anxiety, this kind of angst that's out there at the moment. Certainly from what we're seeing in the focus groups is the simple no-brainer argument for The Voice hasn't been articulated.
And what is that no-brainer argument? According to Welsh, nothing much has worked in the past, and The Voice will give Indigenous people a say in matters that affect them. So, is the media making that clear enough? Not according to the Prime Minister, who claims the media is confusing voters by suggesting Indigenous critics outnumber First Nations supporters. And former media union leader Chris Warren is also critical, telling Crikey readers,
Australia's traditional media can't get out of their own way long enough to learn from their own mistakes. Instead, they're hearing the increasingly hysterical shouts of no from the right and thinking, that's conflict, that's news.
And the strongest warnings of all come from Yes campaigner and former ABC host Kerry O'Brien, who told a parliamentary inquiry that the scare stories he's heard remind him of the fear campaign over Mabo and native title, when people were told their backyards were at risk.
In one sense, I feel despair at seeing history repeated yet again, the sort of scare tactic and the disinformation.
And amid an increasingly acrimonious debate over The Voice, NITV host John Paul Janke was telling insiders,
there are 3 campaigns going on at the moment. There's the Yes campaign, the No campaign, and there's a campaign of racism going around. NITV, we've had to reduce our social media footprint because of just the racist trolling that is out there on The Voice.
Yeah, some of the emails, I'm not Indigenous, but just some of the emails and stuff you get at work just for writing about it or talking about it on shows like this.
And in some way, it's mainstream media. We need to do better. We need to do better to lift this debate.
With another 3 months likely until the vote, it'll be a huge test for the media to rise to the challenge. But now, to the return of a Walter Mitty, who has found a new media outlet to swallow his lies.
Welcome back to the Kids Edition. We've got a very special guest in studio this morning, Nelly Yoa. Nelly, it's an absolute privilege to have you in here. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nelly Yoa is a wannabe celebrity who's been convicted of perjury and caught out many times for his grandiose inventions, which have included that he was sponsored by Nike, played soccer for Chelsea and had Usain Bolt come to a Ballarat hospital for the birth of his child. As 2GB's Ben Fordham summed it up bluntly in 2021...
Nelly Yoa is known in Melbourne to be a serial self-promoter, a narcissistic attention seeker and a professional liar.
But last Sunday, the Sports and Entertainment Radio Network welcomed him to Melbourne for the Kids Edition, where host, 16-year-old Max Becker, and AFL women's player Ellie Blackburn were enthralled by his latest claims.
Obviously, you've affected so many people's lives already. You've donated to orphans in Juba. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, in Juba, South Sudan, we've just opened up a small orphanage.
During a 14-minute heart-to-heart, Yoa spoke about rubbing shoulders with NFL legend Tom Brady and claimed credit for bringing another big star to this country.
Apart from soccer, you mentioned in the break, you bring athletes out to Australia, for example, Usain Bolt. Were you, I guess, behind him coming out to Australia?
I did play a minor part in, convincing him to come over here.
But not long after that interview went to air, it disappeared from SEN's digital sites. So, why was it yanked? An SEN spokesperson confessed.
An interview aired briefly that shouldn't have, that wasn't vetted by our team. We have addressed the matter and reaffirmed our vetting process.
Had their vetting process involved a simple Google search, Yoa's colourful history with the media would have been obvious. Starting in 2012 as the genuine victim of a machete attack, reappearing in 2016 as the professional soccer player who lost his career because of his injuries, and emerging in 2017 as the self-styled mentor of Sudanese youth. And in 2018, they would also have seen it begin to unravel. Days after Yoa wrote a front-page opinion piece for The Age about the need to curb Sudanese gang crime, the paper was forced to admit he might be a fantasist.
Questions raised over credibility of South Sudanese commentator.
Because Sudanese community leaders couldn't find anyone Yoa had mentored or who'd seen him work with African youths. The next day, The Age revealed other lies he'd told.
Mr. Yoa claimed he was sponsored by Nike, a brand ambassador for American Express Australia, and posted a video on his social media profiles suggesting he worked for Mercedes-Benz. All three companies confirmed on Monday they had no arrangement with Mr. Yoa.
Soon after, The Age made a grovelling apology. And in 2019, Yoa was confirmed as a serial fabulist when he showed up to Melbourne Magistrates Court in a white Rolls-Royce, Rego M*1, complete with security detail, to plead guilty to charges of perjury and making a false report to police. After he avoided jail time, 7 News reported,
the magistrate said a forensic psychologist's report found your preoccupation with reputation and public image are a confabulation of a narcissistic individual, and the report found he was prone to fabrication aimed at protecting a constructed public image.
We should not be too hard on 16-year-old Max, and it will no doubt be a valuable lesson re-vetting your talent. But it's hard to believe that no one else at SEN managed to sound the alarm. And as for his latest claims, Yoa was unable to show us any evidence that he set up an orphanage in Sudan or that he helped get Usain Bolt to Australia. He told Media Watch he is not a liar and it is the media that has made him look like one. But like much of what he says, we find that hard to believe. And finally, to the Ashes and those ugly scenes at Lord's last week as the Australian team were mobbed by MCC members, outraged by what they saw as an unfair dismissal. Members at Lord's, which claims to be the home of cricket, are supposed to be genteel, to know how to behave. But this was almost a riot.
Have you ever known an atmosphere like that or scenes like that in the long run in the however many years you've been involved here?
No, and I'm lucky to have played my whole career here, and I've never seen scenes like that, particularly in the long room.
Angry Australian commentators hit back hard. Gideon Haigh and the Australian branded the MCC hooligans blimps and prigs and puce-faced dim-bulb snobs, while the Australians' Peter Layla invoked class war and told the MCC protesters to
take it on the chin, if you got one.
So, what could be more delicious than to have all those prejudices confirmed when 3 of the offenders were singled out by the MCC and banned?
These are their names.
Okay.
So they are MCC members that were involved in the long room fracas.
Here we go.
Bartholomew Frinton Smythe, Humphrey Wigbert Porter, and Quinton Breckenridge.
Nah, someone's bullshitting us here.
I am
They're
telling
the
you,
actual
if
names
that
of
aren't-
these people.
If they aren't the most MCC pompous names you've ever heard in your life, Quinton, Bartholomew and Humphrey, and the hyphens.
Snobs, toffs and hooray Henrys, out they go, proving Australia should become a republic. And with Humphrey Wigbert Porter trending on Twitter, other sporting commentators rushed to join the pile-on.
Bartholomew Frinton Smythe.
A grade.
Humphrey Wigbert Porter.
Derek.
And Quinton Breckenridge.
Flog.
Have you made them up?
No.
You've made them up.
No.
They're legit. They're legit members.
They're legit A grades.
Made them up? No chance of that. Or not for Aussie cricket legend Mark Waugh, who was the next to gloat.
I'll give you the names of the 3 members who have been suspended. Now listen to these names.
And come Wednesday morning, News Corp's Robert Craddock was trotting them all out in his report for The Australian, Advertiser and Courier Mail. And the ABC's Andrew Hansen was joining the fun on Melbourne Breakfast.
No, this is not an episode of the 3rd season of Blackadder. This is really true. These people have been booted.
And is that what the suspended members were really called? No, only in your cliched wildest dreams. So how on earth were the media reeled in? By this one tweet, which has notched up 1.7 million views, from Sean, an unidentified rascal from Manchester, who inserted the bogus names into the genuine MCC statement and sourced it to the UK Telegraph. And surprise, surprise, those sharp-shooting commentators didn't spot the joke or bother to check. Yes, sucked in. That's all from us for tonight. You can read a full statement from 9 on our website. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, till next week, goodbye.